Hey, you're listening to Fat and Greasy Citizens, a podcast about Shakespeare. I'm Fat.
And I'm Greasy. Every week we do a deep dive into every act of every Shakespeare play ever written, mostly while drinking.
More specifically, I'm Chuck. I'm a former English major and now a digital editor who cares a lot about Shakespeare.
And I'm Gabe. Let's do it!
Greetings, citizens. It is we, Queens of Beth I, hollering at ya from beyond the grave. Welcome you to Fat and Greasy Citizens. This week, it is Two Gentlemen of Verona, Act 3. The players Chuck and Gabe failed to mention that in the previous act, the character Proteus, who was in love with Julia, is now in love with Sylvia, who his best friend Valentine loves. Will Proteus gladly throw his friends to the dogs for a girl he literally just saw for the first time? Of course he will. This is all before bros before hoes. Courtly mans before courtesans. It is devoutly to be wished. Enjoy.
We record on the Zoom as well to be... Okay, now we're recording in two places. That's... All right, that's canon. Emo Phillips as Lance.
Making an end to the canon for the first time. Emo Phillips. I have to say, like, this definitely felt like this act definitely felt like the winking to the, like, this is the plot, folks. So, like, here we go with the big switcheroo here.
What I decided I liked about it is, like, there were points where they were so this whole act is just Proteus just being just a...
He's really the worst.
And what I liked about it is, like, he's worthless to his friend. He's conniving to make Sylvia's life horrible. He's just manipulating a stupid old man. But in each of those, like, he's so brazen about it, and it's such like a heel turn from where he was an act and a half ago that I was just like, okay, well, like, it just signaled to me effectively, like, okay, this is bizarre but interesting, and I'm fine with it. Like, if this is where it's going to be, where he's going to be a mopey sad sack in Act 1, and now he's just going to be this, just doing so much more to his friend than he has to. Like, I wrote down in like 4 stanzas in, he's like, you've won at this point, and you keep laying onto your friend and just being like, and here's another thing, friend. Oh, and here's what else you could do. And it's just like, you've won. He's excommunicated. Like, you're good to go. And he just keeps being a dick to everyone everywhere. And it made me feel like, okay, this is just supposed to be fun and stupid. Like, it reminded me of when in Tom and Jerry, Tom and the black cat would fight for a girl cat. They're just hitting each other in the head with hammers and stuff. I'm just like, okay, this is supposed to be absurd, and so I'm fine with it. I'm not actually offended by what a trash person he is, because it's at the level of stupidity where I'm not going to bother worrying about the fact that he's trying to get his friend killed because he likes the girl that he likes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying. The only thing I would struggle with is, how do you make that, as you say, heel turn clear in the scope of the character? Because I do feel like it's such a... I mean, Shakespeare clearly has the scene where Proteus meets Sylvia, and yes, there's a spark there. But how do you, as the actor, make it clear to the audience that Proteus is capable of that kind of heel turn? Yes, it's a comedy, and yes, it's supposed to be absurd, but it still kind of has to make sense, you know. Yeah. It's still, you know, you still have to hint at it a little that Proteus is a dickbag, you know.
And so that's what made me feel like it made me go back to, like, the first act and be like, okay, if he's going to be such a worthless sad sack in the first act, then you have to ham up that so much that you're just like, you were this stay-at-home crazy person who was just writing poems that he would never share with a girl, and now you've quickly found another girl and you're risking your best friend's life.
Yeah, or maybe it's like, because, like, if we were to assume that whatever thing everybody else says about Proteus is true, that, you know, he's never seen the world, he's never gone and done anything, this could just be small town boy. This is the Brightburn of Shakespeare. Like small town boy is all of a sudden exposed to, like, Sylvia is the first woman he saw off the boat, in a new town, and all of a sudden his hick past is just thrown out the window. Like he'll murder anybody to get this woman now. Like his world was so small and now it's so big.
It in thinking about like the incredible heel turn that he takes in this, it reminded me of like, if this is about like the pacing you would have in a Rockstar game, where you were like, you had a small side mission and there are these two friends, and then they start fighting over a girl, and one of the friends is just like, oh well, then I'll set him up for murder and get him kicked out of the town and he can never come back. And I'll be sure that I'll tell the Duke that if anyone sees him and he's not out of here by the end of the day, he should be shot dead. And it's just like so absurd that like that's the only comparison I could go to. And it's a cliche at this point, but it's funny when people are like, you shouldn't media is so violent these days, we should go focus on the tried and true stuff. And this is just a teen sex comedy, where instead of like unusual teen sex comedies of the 80s and 90s, there's like teens talking about sex, there's teens vying for a woman, and one of them just tries to get the other one killed and excommunicated in his life, and it's all played for laughs. There's a woman trapped in a tower played for laughs. There's this guy being chased out of town played for laughs. Like it's like the only humor that I could compare it to in modern era is like a Grand Theft Auto vignette or a Red Dead vignette, where it's just like, well, that's crazy that person's going to murder that person over a girl.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you say that and it makes me think that Shrew is very similar. Like, how do I tame this woman? Well, I'm going to starve her and completely gaslight her for, like, it's like so extreme. I don't know why I did John Lovitz there, but I'm going to starve her and then gaslight her.
But that would be
Gloria
fantastic Petruchio casting.
Acting. But it's very similar. Like I remember George Carlin used to say, I've seen it. I saw him in the documentary Aristocats say it. Aristocrats, I should say, not the Disney cartoon. He did it in the Aristocrats, and he also did it on stage where he said, the thing that makes I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the thing that makes the joke is the exaggeration. Anything can be funny as long as you find what the exaggeration is. And Shakespeare does that. Like, as you say, the pace in his comedies, at least these first two, are insane. Like, that heel turn is like whiplash quick, and Shrew was very similar, where it's the extremity of where these characters go. They go from 0 to 60 in a matter of a page or two.
The heel turn here is like Nicolas Cage, John Travolta face-off level. You can literally just switch bodies. Like,
took his face off. Yeah, that's very true. But it's so like, and it's funny. Like you see the little exaggerations more and more the more you read the play. Like, for instance, in Act 3, Scene 1. Thurio's exit is the quickest I've ever seen in a Shakespeare play.
Oh God!
Because at the beginning of the scene, it says Duke Thurio and Proteus enter, and in one line, Thurio is asked to leave.
It is
like they just came in. I think that's the quickest I've ever seen that happen.
No, it is my favorite thing so far as like signaling someone with an exit. Just like walk on and be like, Thurio, I'm talking to a smart person. Fuck off.
And then he leaves. It's beautiful.
It just perfectly conveys like this is not one of the three male characters. This is the two gentlemen of Verona, not the three.
Beat it, clown. I got to talk to this guy. But it reminded me of the cop scene in Shrew, where it's like, somebody get a policeman. Well, I'm a policeman. Like it's like even like that kind of abrupt character entrance and exit. Like Shakespeare got it. It's funny. Like, it's funny today.
Well, it's interesting in that, like, I don't know if it's just I feel like I have no idea how acts were divided in Elizabethan theater. As a modern playgoer, I only like step back and say like, oh, I consider this the quote third act or something. But like in the two plays we've done so far, it seems like you could almost produce the different acts differently because there's such a crazy turn to them. And this one, I feel like this one is just Tex Avery right out of the gate, because when you said like Thurio is already adult, he's listed in the in the playbook that you get as Thurio, comma, adult. But he walks, three people walk on screen, one gets dismissed, and then right away, like for like the one of like 10 times in this act alone, and one of like 20 times in the play so far, Proteus just launches off into like, listen, I would never want to betray my friend, but it's only because I respect you so much that I'd listen, and I would never betray my friend. But, and so I just want, again, I would never betray my friend, but he's going after your daughter. He wants her. He's doing it behind your back. He's got a rope. He's got a ladder. He's going to do it tonight. But to be clear, I would never be. And it's just like, it's so much extra sleazier.
Yeah.
If he didn't go through the just like constant patting himself on the back and like, I'm a man of honor, I would never do this. It's just, and his entire argument is, I would never screw over my friend, but you're the Duke, so I will.
And it's also a little hazy. Oh, the ghost. It's also a little hazy whether or not Valentine was actually serious about that, because it did come off like he's making it up as he went along. Because
oh yeah, no,
you know what I
think
mean?
we both read the same way. As like he was bullshitting his way through it, and then he ends up like he's carrying it on him. That's the other thing that's crazy about this. He's like, I'm gonna get a ladder and go up tonight, and he's carrying the ladder around the whole time. It's just like, what you got 10 hours, man. You don't need to carry the rope on you all day.
As soon as Proteus lays out Valentine's plan to the Duke, what I think is fascinating is the Duke says something to the effect of, yeah, every time they thought I was sleeping, I would go and I would watch him, and I almost kicked him out of court. And I thought to myself, hold up. This old man, rather than like storm in and say, "Hey, beat it. This is my house," he's just watching his daughter, like, and he's a perv.
Acting like he's. They're both so terrible, because he's just like, yeah, I would. First of all, he's like, I wasn't sure, so I kept acting like I was sleeping, and it was just like, maybe just like show that you're awake. Say, guys, what's going on?
Yeah,
let me introduce myself. I'm her dad. Yeah. Who are you? But it's just like,
I was gonna say something.
Like,
I was gonna say something, but I was rock hard, man. I couldn't
be sure. So I just sat there and watched them, and then I decided I don't like this guy.
Like, I'm glad you said something, because now like it just seemed like the Duke is a little bit of
he's a crazy what's the word where you constantly think paranoid. He's a crazy paranoid old man with money. Like that's what it becomes. Yeah. I think I read this twice. The first time I read it, it's just like, oh, he's the Duke. The Duke is always a respected character. And the second reading, I was like, oh no, he's crazy paranoid guy, because like everything that he says is crazy, and everything that Proteus says to like bump him up like shouldn't work for him at all. Like I also find it nice that Proteus allegedly loves Sylvia, who he's talked to all of like 5 sentences. And the way he explains his position to the Duke is just like, well, first of all, I know you've determined to give her to Thurio, who she hates, and rends her garments when she talks about him. And he's just like, yeah, no, that's what I decided to do. Like, and they're both on the same page of just like, I'm going to help you match her up with this person that she hates and makes her miserable. And the Duke is just like, yeah, no, she hates him. He's awful. Yes, you got it right. So what else can you do for me? Like, at no point does the Duke say that, oh, but here's Thurio's redeeming quality. And at no point does, or to be fair, no one points out the only person that says Thurio has redeeming qualities is Valentine later, when he just lies to his face, like, oh, he's great, he's grand. But just the fact that like Proteus, Sylvia is not in this act at all, but Proteus both says that Proteus tells everyone that she's made miserable by what's happening throughout this. But at no point does the Duke care about that, nor does Proteus show that he cares at all that he's making her miserable by doing this.
No.
And I like that the Duke, when after Proteus does his first stanza about just like, I would never betray my friend, but the first thing the Duke says is, well, thank you for your honest care. And that's when you know that he's just like he's gone as an old man. He's a bag of money with nothing but paranoia and jealousy in his heart. But just like, thank you for your honest care was like a great, like, okay, so Proteus is like our Iago character, at least for this act. Like he is the scumbag pushing the moneyed old man around.
It's just like the Bachelorette when when the other bachelors like go to the Bachelorette and they're like, look, I got to tell you about Dave. Dave, I don't think he's here for the right reasons. And the Bachelorette eats it up. That's what it is. Like Proteus knows the game. Like if you get the conspiracy theory in there first, then the rich old man is definitely going to whatever you say, you know.
And it's just great that like Proteus never blinks because the dad's like, yeah, well, thank you, you get me, because dad says what. So I was laying there rock hard, and so I got worried. So you know what I did? Naturally, I locked her in a fucking tower she can't get out of. And Proteus is like, yeah, of course you would. That's what you would do.
That's what you do.
When you suspect someone's talking to your daughter, you hire some masons, you build a sturdy tower, and you lock her in there until she falls in love with a man who's listed as adult on the playwright.
But you know, like as much as Proteus is a dick in here, like Valentine's advice to the Duke, like obviously the Duke is trying to play him by like, hey, if you were to woo a woman, how would you do it in order to capture him?
Yeah.
But Valentine's advice is awful. It's like no means no, Valentine. Like
both of their advice is just again, that feels like a Tex Avery cartoon or a Tom and Jerry cartoon because it's just so awful throughout. And they're just like, well, let me tell you what women want. And I can't remember what's Valentine's first ones because I can't remember it. I can only remember.
It's basically, well, if she scorns you, it just means that she loves you. You know, it's like if she hates the thing that you gave her, get her another one. Like it's like such a, like it really is like a cliched, you know, women are just trying to be coy. They're all teases. Whatever they say, do the opposite. That's what they want.
You know who's the only person who doesn't say that in this whole act is Thurio. The other three guys are all just like, does she say go away? That means don't go away.
That means don't go away.
Is she angry? Oh, anger, that's just like it's just like an ice cube in front of a hearth. That'll melt in an hour.
Yeah.
And Thurio's just like,
it's
okay, guys. Listen, I don't know anything. I am listed as a dullard on the front of the pamphlet. So if you guys say so, but the three of them who are allegedly looking after Sylvia's best interests are just like, that's a good sign. That's when she slaps you. That's a good sign.
You're on the right track.
That's fire, baby.
But like that advice is terrible, and his plan for the running away with her is also terrible. In that, for some reason, he's carrying a note explaining his plan that presumably he's going to give to the woman that he's about to elope with. Like, it makes no sense. Like, why would you write a note?
After the grappling hook hits her window.
Yeah.
He's climbing up. He's like, But
as he's scrambling through the window, he hands her, he's like, this will explain everything. As he's like hanging a ladder out of the...
I love the bizarreness of this because there's no way of knowing if any of them believe this bullshit about the power of poetry. Like, throughout this, they're all like, oh, man, you get the words right and everything's yours. And so Valentine's plan is to grappling hook up there, give her a note, and boom, he's set.
Yeah.
That's what he says to do to the Duke. That's what Proteus advises
Thurio to do. Yep.
And they're all just like, like he at the end he's telling through, it was just like, oh yeah, man, you get the words right, man. You'll get a kraken to come up out of the water and dance on the beach, man. Like,
Yeah.
you say it right, it'll be fantastic. And it's just, I think you have to read it all as bullshit. I don't know, but I just enjoyed that it
Well,
was
it has to
having
be,
a level
right?
of absurdity throughout the whole thing. Like,
It has to be, because all of the words in this play so far, all of the words that have been written in order to woo somebody have not been delivered to the recipient
no,
of the person.
it's never gotten to them.
Nobody's read a word of it yet. You know, like all these
It's
sweet
all
words
just these schmucks trying to write things and then somehow getting waylaid before they actually get to the woman that they're trying to make it do. And when they do sometimes get to the woman, they try and describe the letter to the woman, and the woman gets angry at them and tears it up, and then goes off on their own idiotic way. Like,
none of this prosy has been examined at all. Like, nobody. It's all in vain.
They talk about poetry the way like 16 and 17-year-olds talk about getting their hands on alcohol for a party. It's just like, here's what's gonna happen. Susie's gonna come to the party, and if you get the limoncello, she's gonna fall in love with me. She's gonna fall in love with me. Okay.
Nothing says romance like a long, slender bottle.
It's gonna be perfect. I know she likes this stuff. It'll work. I'll climb into her window with a big bottle of lemon liqueur. It's illuminating that, like, I'm constantly reminded of just like my own idiocy as a teen and of teen comedies and watching this, and that just like this is just about idiots, and it's whereas like the talking poorly about old people in Shrew just felt like ageism. Here it's just like, oh great, it's just a stupid old man and two teenagers. Like,
yeah.
I'm just happy that they're all idiots, and I don't care what happens to any of them, so it's fine.
They are all idiots, but I have to admit to when Valentine is finally shut down by Dad, I do like his speech. As corny as it is at times, I do like, I actually highlighted a few lines here. Except I be by Sylvia in the night, there is no music in the nightingale. Unless I look on Sylvia in the day, there is no day for me to look upon. That's sweet. I mean, yes, it's extreme and, you know, hokey as shit, but I do like the way it's written. And, you know, what I like about it is that there's like this little blip of beauty that immediately goes into like some of the most melodramatic shit ever. Like right after that, when Proteus comes back into the scene, like Valentine is pretending like he doesn't exist anymore, or like he's not. Well, it's like, Valentine, no. It's like, all right, like
it's just great that like that's happening, and just like Proteus is just like, yeah, sucks, man. Like,
hey, you look down. I've got some worse news. I better keep it quiet because my news is terrible.
There's a trend line that I want to keep track of. Speaking of these sexist trash characters, I feel like women are the only ones that get described with like 6 bad adjectives in a row. In line 68 in the scene, she's like, oh yeah, she's described as proud, disobedient, stubborn, lacking duty. I guess that was only 4, but like I feel like whenever someone's described as like shitty, smelly, stinky, ugly, like it's always a woman. Like, men can get cut down with verse, but like it's whenever it's a woman off screen who is froward, which is my favorite term, is the worst thing in Shakespeare world, is for a woman to be froward, then they just like list off 4 adjectives, and I'm gonna wait to see if that ever happens to a man. I'm guessing it doesn't. It's just always bros talking about a woman who's off screen.
Oh, and just like Shrew, proud and disobedient. Those are, I mean, that could have come right out of Shrew. Those same 2 words, you know, like that's like a woman's greatest sin. And in fact, I think that whole idea is kind of lampooned in the very next scene between Lance and Speed, you know, where it's like they're talking about her virtues and stuff like that. And go ahead.
But before we get there, I'm just curious, like, so how stupid is Valentine to be like, the Duke is like, I want some advice. I'm trying to get a lady. And he's like, well, have you thought about using a grappling hook? And delivering a note when he's got a grappling hook on him. Like,
yeah.
like it makes me, it was one of the signals to me that like, because his soliloquy about the Nightingale didn't hit me as hard because it came after this. And I was just like, oh, you're a special moron.
He is an idiot.
You're talking to her psycho dad who runs the town. You're just like, well, you know what dames love? Grappling hooks and notes. Oh, who could foresee?
A note that fully describes what I'm about to do.
In my pocket. And it's like, well, you need a cloak. You know, the only thing I have disguising all of this evidence on me. So I'm gonna tell you about the evidence. I've got it on my body, and then I'm gonna describe the only thing that shows that I don't have a grappling hook on me. Oh no, you want
my nuts.
Oh, who could foresee? Oh, Valentine, you schmuck. I don't know. It just
I mean, and to be fair, like the Duke definitely sniffs out his moronic behavior, like just like the idea of like, oh, what kind of how big of a cloak, how long of a cloak, like the one you're wearing right here.
He's just like, I don't know. It's just great. It's just like, have you ever? His way of wooing Sylvia is so stupid and random that just the fact that he's gonna be like, oh yeah, I got it. It works every time. You just break into a room and shove a note in her face, and it's yours.
Though, like Proteus's report, and definitely suggest. I mean, it suggests that they did have a thing, but like as that whole side of it is very. Whether or not Valentine and Sylvia actually have a relationship at this point is very fuzzy, and you know, I blame Shakespeare. Because it really isn't clear.
I'm enjoying the fact that like she said one flirty thing to him, and he's just like, it's like WWE heel turn where it's just like, oh, Lady Elizabeth.
He hit him with a chair, Mean Gene.
I'm gonna hit the Macho Man with the chair. Like,
oh my God.
Oh, Lady Elizabeth. Oh, she shouldn't have been talking to him, man. You know what happens. You know, the George the Animal Steel, he can't control himself.
Oh, he's eating the turnbuckle. Stop the damn match.
He's got to get out of town. The Duke's going to find him. Oh, no, it's the Duke.
Oh, the Duke from backstage. He can't take it anymore. There it is, the Duke Stunner.
Oh, no.
But yeah, like it totally, like now that Valentine's out of the way, like that wasn't bad enough. So like scene 2 definitely is Proteus just doubling down on
just for no fucking reason. Like
he's
won
like
after Act 1. He's completely won. Like his friend is getting kicked out of town. He's in complete control, and he's like, so why don't you send your love notes to her to me? Like,
yeah,
scumbag. You absolute scumbag.
And you know, it's funny because I feel like this comes up in Shakespeare a lot. Like it begins with the Duke echoing the same thing that Proteus said in the last scene about time healing things, and then Proteus says it again in this scene, and Proteus is in this predicament where he has to woo somebody who is fundamentally upset and probably hates him. And it actually reminds me a lot of Richard III. When we get there, there's a scene where Richard has to woo. Oh shit! I want to say Catherine.
It's like Catherine. I don't know.
I think it's Catherine. But anyway, it's like he has to woo this woman at the funeral of her husband, like on the coffin, and it's like masterfully done. You know, it's really masterfully done. But this reminds me, like, there's a lot of that in Shakespeare of like wooing a woman against her better judgment. You know, like getting a woman to fall in love with you despite overwhelming obstacles. Again, like no means no. Like don't ever take the woman's responses as
being no.
Yeah, there's this like running theme through a lot of the Shakespeare plays where it's like, well, she might say no.
Well,
but
I think that's part of the reason that this act worked for me is that we never have to see Sylvia going through this stuff. And so there's times when I was wondering, like, Proteus is playing it up and saying, like, oh God, she was rending her garments. She was like crying at the Duke's feet. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that happened. And then it seems like it did happen. So I was like, all right, like, can't laugh at this. But none of it, like, it just, because it just seemed like three over testosterone morons just like slapping each other around, that like it didn't seem nearly as sexist and bad. It just seemed like, oh, you're idiots. And if you guys want to compete in stupid ways and you want to betray your best friend and have the cops out to kill him, then if you want to do that all before you talk to Sylvia, then that's a lesser sin than like doing it with her on stage or involving her in it. Like if you guys want to fight over her and she doesn't know, then like, okay, like slap each other all you want. And if you want to condemn him to die, that's better than like tearing him from her grasp or something. But I don't think we know what she wants, because she was flirting with Proteus, and it seems like a couple different people say that she's just like stark raving mad once Valentine is condemned to leave. Are they in Milan? I think. So whenever he's condemned to leave the city. So
right.
But it just feels like three idiots not slapping it around. Idiots slapping each other.
Crossing the streams. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But I feel like the advice. I think the advice is it kind of echoes what Valentine says, where it's just like, just wait. You know, they all come around eventually. You know, so, but it spins into this like, speaking of bad advice, like it then becomes like the logic in this scene. It gets a little weird for me, because then the Duke says something to when Proteus is like, well, I can't say anything bad about Valentine. He's my very good friend. And the Duke says, spitting hot fire as he does, he's like, where your good word cannot advantage him, your slander never can damage him. And that to me doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, well, you can't say anything good about him, so what's the hurt of saying something that's going to damage him? Like it doesn't.
So that didn't make much sense to me, but I really like the next part, because what Proteus says is, it's an ill office for a gentleman to screw over your friend. And the Duke's like, listen, the thing you just said, therefore the office isn't different being entreated to it by your friend. And I feel like what he's saying is like, oh, you're saying it's a bad office for someone to do this. And he's like, I'm the fucking Duke. I'm your friend. So I'm the office. So don't worry, man. Like, you're doing this for the Duke. So shut up. Like I'm a paranoid old man, but I still understand power. And like, you don't need to worry about your gentlemanly good name. You're doing what I tell you to do. And so don't. And so it just seemed like a nice, evil little, like, an evil little thing where it's just like, there's a possibility. Valentine's already the worst schmuck on the planet, but Proteus is. But there's a possibility that when Proteus says this stuff, he's like not wanting to take every step. And Proteus is always just like, no, it's fine, man. Screw over your friend. Just come on. I'll pay you. I'll take care of you. I'll be in your debt. Just tell me what you got here.
Yeah, because the end goal is to get Sylvia out of here. That's kind of what Shrew was like too. You know,
yeah.
So like the end goal is like, somebody's got to get married.
It does remind me of like we're 2 plays in, and that just like this is just feels like I wonder if like if the majority of Shakespeare plays, now I'm just thinking about this for the first time, are just like going to have just terrible dads. Like I feel like most Shakespeare plays that I can think of have a terrible dad in it, but not this, and both in their characterization, but also like this would remind me of Shrew, in that like he's trying to say how frustrated he is with Sylvia for not responding to Thurio, and he just starts describing her as like a sandbag. He again does a series of adjectives. He says she's lumpish, heavy, melancholy, and it's like none of those are about being unresponsive to a man, but he's just describing her like she's Grimace, because it's just like, oh man, she's she's just a bag of trash. She's just she's a deflated water balloon. She's just like, why lumpy? Like, she's in a bad mood. She's really lumpy. And so, like, I feel like I think one thing that I'll never be able to paper over is that for women so far, there's the highest compliment that you can give to a woman's beauty is white. It's always just like when he's describing how when he's trying to drive Valentine crazy, he was like, oh, she was crying and it was just pearls coming out of her eyes. And when they're talking about her beauty, they describe her as white. And I just I underlined every time they described her beauty just by describing her as white, and it's like again and again and again. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, as we discussed, like the best thing you can be is white, and the worst thing you can be is froward. And just like, and those are the worst and the best women. And it's just it's funny because neither of them actually like have any value, but it's just like you're in crazy town. We're just like even this player just like, oh man, she's so white. When she cries, it's like pearls. It's just like, gosh, she's so white. She's just so white. It's just
it makes me wonder how far back that that stereotype goes, or maybe it's a trope is the word I'm looking for.
I don't know if it was I feel like 5th grade social studies is trying to tell me that
cowboys, like white hats versus black hats.
Well, I thought it was that like rich people got to stay out of the sun, like probably had something more than a roof, but basically had a roof all the time. And so the ladies would be really white or something, but I don't know. But
I heard
every time
that
I
too.
see it, it's becoming such a cliche that it's just like, you're so good with words, man. Can't you come up with something else that conveys pretty other than just like, oh man, she's
I heard that too. That if being rich, if you were white, it implied that you had enough money not to work outside, basically. Yeah. And if you had any color in you, it meant that you had to toil for something, and then you were low rent. It was only like when going to tropical islands became popular that being tan was synonymous with wealth.
It's such like a sad vision of romantic love to be like the worst thing you can do is have a will of your own.
That same thing.
And the best thing you can do is just be a potato that grows inside. Like those.
Right.
That's the spectrum of romantic love.
Well, speaking of romantic love, the Proteus's tips to Thurio include he says something like go to her bedchamber and sing a sad song, but rather than say sing a sad song with a band, he says go to her room and sing a sad song with a band, and he says something effective, to their instruments tune a deploring dump. And I know he's saying sing a sad song, but that's an awesome line.
It's just like, I want a deploring dump. Just like, yeah, I couldn't even imagine what it sounds like, and that's one of the things which is so much better to describe it. And then it's just like, and because he says just sing her deploring dump, and then the silence after it will be so sweet. It's the worst advice ever. Just like,
I feel like sad songs have to be called that from now on. I think Tom Waits should have an album called Deploring Dumps.
Deploring Dump. There's another Deploring Dump, as the bard would call it.
Yeah, the advice is terrible.
You come in after she doesn't want to see you. You get a band to play the worst music ever, and then she'll be like, "Thank God it's over." And so then obviously she'll love you. It's just, and Thurio's like, "You're brilliant. How do you do it?"
Yeah, and that's the great cap on the scene is Thurio's like, "All right, now we're talking. I've got a sonnet that I wrote." Like he says something like, "I have a sonnet prepared. Let's do it. I've got it."
It's great. He's like, "I know a guy who can play the lute. I got a sonnet prepared."
I happen to play part-time in a band, so this is perfect. Yeah, it really is.
Right before that, when he started to tell him to get poems, the Duke chimes in. He's just like, "Oh yeah, poems do it for him. Yeah, that's a good one. Poems. That's gonna close the deal." It's just like she was on her knees, like begging you to not banish her boyfriend, and you're just like, give her a poem. It's gonna. I have no idea what accent I'm doing, but it's delightfully. And then there's the line that I was talking about where Proteus is just like, yeah, man, you get the right poem that like the Leviathan will come out of the water and dance on the sand. People go nuts. It's just like all you need to survive anywhere in the world, or just to have nature at your demand, is a good poem. And it's just, I don't know. It's just delightfully stupid.
As we've seen so far, because everything in this play is a direct result of the power of the word.
And so I haven't read the fourth act yet, but I just got like the first scene, speaking of like just like hit and go from the start, the next scene starts with just like two outlaws talking to each other as they're about to mug Valentine. So it's just perfect that they're like having this incompetent thing to just like drive Sylvia insane and try and win her love with terrible music, and just like he's about to be attacked, his Valentine's about to be attacked by banditos wherever he is. It's just like I don't know. I'm happy with the level of stupidity going on in here.
Don't go on the King's Road. Valentine, now played by Rick Moranis, as he gets jumped. This play will end with Suddenly Seymour.
Yeah, man. Letters and poetry, man. That's all you need.
That's what they like. It's what they crave.
There was we skipped over, as I'm sure every production does, but we skipped over Lance's god awful puns or whatever he was doing with Speed.
You know what I love about that is that Speed is also fed up with Lance.
Yeah,
like he's like the first thing he says, like Speed's response is, "Your old voice still."
Yeah,
kind of like, yeah, you're still doing the same bits, huh?
This is the thing where you don't understand how words work. Okay, cool. It's great.
It really is. Like he's like, oh God, okay. And I love how that's.
Oh, she sews. It's to say just so. It's like, yeah, we did this already, and no one laughed the first time. That said, this if you did it with the emo Phillips doing throughout, I really like Lance's thing at the end where he's just like, oh, or I'll just do the emo Phillips voice, like, oh, he's going to be late and to help his boss, and he'll be hung. He deserves that for trying to read my note. And it's so delightfully insane where it's just like, he tried to read my note. I hope he gets hung. And I don't know, just like Lance gets the better of it, because if he doesn't get to his boss in time, then they'll both be hung or something. It's just it like rendered not awful the entire awful 10 stanzas before it, where at times the sexism is so dense I can't even understand what's going on. Like they'll compare a woman to like a pincushion or something, and you're just like, I know you're trying to be awful. I don't know what it is, what stereotype it is you're leaning on.
Oh yeah.
Much like when Lance trying to be sexist is like Lance trying to be anti-Semitic. It's just like, what are you? Listen, I get it. You're a terrible person, but I'm not getting these references at all. So just trust me. I'm offended. Can we move on? And just like,
there was like that whole bit with the loose women. It was like, well, she can't be loose in the tongue because you just said that she had a slow tongue, and then she could be loose in another way. But there's nothing I can do about that. Boom, you know, and you're like, oh my God, shut this fucker up.
There's another point where he makes a joke about like, there's something about how she can scour the pots, and that's slang for just beating the other living hell out of a woman. And he's like, see, so that won't come up when I have to beat the hell out of her, because as you know, we beat women.
We beat
Speed is just like, the fuck are you? There's no way you've ever touched a woman, Lance. I've made this list, and you're making me read the list because for some reason you challenged whether or not I could read. Why? Do I have to take you out for a drink again? What do I have to do to get out of this scene? Why is this scene here? I hate you so much. I hope that I run you through in Act 5 because
I think every scene with him so far has ended in what the fuck, like, because I think Speed, like when it's finally like, oh, you have to meet your master because at the front gates, like, why didn't you say that at the beginning? like he's like infuriating. Like, he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Lance will never know what the fuck is wrong with him. He's just gonna spend his days like he's talking to his shoes, getting in fights with his dog, just making a list to himself about whether or not the woman that he's in love with like actually has good properties or not, and trying to get people hung, and challenging anyone who walks by about whether or not they can read. Like I don't think Lance knows he's an asshole. Like
No.
I don't think he'll ever know how to be anti-Semitic. I don't think he'll ever know how to be sexist. He's just a perfect moron. So I don't know. I have nothing to add to your Emo Phillips casting, because that's, unless there's some 21st century equivalent of Emo Phillips, because you'd have to be that grating and awful.
To be fair, Emo Phillips does look like he could be, a yokel sitting on a fence on the English countryside.
Well, he always wore those overalls, or was that just in UHF? But like,
I think he did, but he always had that kind of like that, like giant Prince Charming haircut kind of thing, like the
Prince Valiant, yeah,
Prince Valiant, right? That's the one I'm thinking of. And he's perfect. Like, he looks like he stepped out of an Elizabethan wormhole.
The way that they talk about Sylvia in this, and that's just like, oh man, she's so white. Not in the horribly racist way, but in the just like utterly arbitrary ways in which like sometimes she's a lump and sometimes she's like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen.
Right.
It also reminded me of like teen comedies where you will, or not even, I guess they're probably romantic teen movies where if you have to cast two women, they're usually like two beautiful 20-somethings being cast as 16-year-olds, but one has to be cast as like the romantic lead and one is not. And so like people will just like signal to each other like, oh, she's the most popular girl in school, and she's just like in Teen Wolf it's Boof, but it's just like the girl on the side, or it's like the female equivalent of Ducky in Pretty in Pink. But like, right, the just sheer arbitrariness of like teenage boys trying to figure out like what's attractive or what isn't. Like I was just struck by the degree to which like it just reminds me of like they're just making this up as they go along. It doesn't make any sense that like one of these women would be more attractive than the other, or that Sylvia's actual physical shape would change as she's described to be froward or sassy or anything else. I don't know. I was thinking about like how often that happens in teen comedies and whatnot, and like so many teen comedies are actually like half-assed rewritings of like Shakespeare or Elizabethan novels or Old English novels. Like Clueless is a rewrite. She's All That is a rewrite. We were talking last time about how like Taming the Shrew got made into 10 Things I Hate About You, and like right. I don't know. There's something I'm trying to get to where there's just like fundamentally baked into these stupid teen stories is just teen boys trying to understand reality, and they just decide as a toxic unit that like, oh, there's this one desirable woman and we're going to define her as such, and there's this other one that we don't see in a sexual way. And it's just weird to me or it's fascinating to me to see that like that can exist in like the highest form of culture and like the lowest form of culture imaginable, which is the teen comedy. But like,
and it really is like, I think that's fascinating, because if that existed in Shakespeare's time, this idea of, especially from the perspective of young men and how they process life and romance and love. Right. And like that's such especially like, my formative years in the, watching movies in the 80s. Yeah, every movie was that from the perspective of that character. And then you think, as an older gentleman now, I think, who gives a shit? I would never ask a teenage boy his opinion on anything. Like, they have nothing to say. They have no, like their processing of the world is superficial at best. And I know that a lot of the comedy stems from that, like their inability to, like, their coming of age sexually, where they, sex and romance seems to be the kind of the same thing, and then they learn the true meaning of love or whatever, and yeah, like that's the story. But that story is told so often that I wonder, like, don't we have anybody else who can chime in on this? It's amazing something like Pretty in Pink was made, where it's from the girl's perspective, and it's actually a lot more interesting. It was refreshing for the time, like I don't, like I just find it fascinating that kind of cliche goes back so far, like Shakespeare did it too,
Well, it's such a stupid oversimplification to be like, it's such a stupid oversimplification to say that, like, say there could be a person like Proteus who is madly in love with a woman and then just sees the girl that his friend is after and is just like, what? I've forgotten this woman that I spent months just running sonnets for, and I will consign my best friend to death. But that's a microcosm of the teenage boy brain, which says, we all know who the hottest girl in school is. Right. And she's also the most popular girl in school. Like, we all agree that it's a pyramid. And we all agree that there's one person at the top, and then we can disagree about 2 and 3, but like we all agree that it's a pyramid. And there's just clearly something universal about the stupid developing male mind, where if you want to, you can allow any audience to like zoom back into that mind, and it's obviously clarifying from a storytelling point of view, like how do we make this person interesting? Okay, well, we'll just say the same way that like you don't in an action movie, you don't say like, well, we got to get the 6th best hacker. You got to get the best hacker and you got to get him out of jail.
Right.
You don't
right.
Schwarzenegger isn't like one of the 10 most dangerous people on the planet. He's the best killer or whatever else. Like, that's what you always have to do, but it's just interesting to constantly be talking about love, and at least so far in the comedies, it's just like the stupidest version of love, and true, just a complete inversion of the idea of love. But maybe that's like, for a comedy, the only way that you can really talk about love is just like use dumb words to be like, oh yeah, that's, we all agree these are the two most, if there's 2 guys, then there'll be the 2 most beautiful women possible, and that the way they see reality is the way that we have to understand reality. But like, I don't know, like, just it's fascinating to me to see that like there's an up culture and a down culture version of both of them, because it's not really worthwhile. And it'll be interesting to see like if after doing this in the comedies, like if the view of romantic love ever matures at all, or in the comedies it just has to be, oh, I walked into a room, I fell in love with her, some violence came out of that, and then we decided to get married and we were happily ever after.
Yeah.
Like that's the path always, just like saw her, loved her, violence, but it worked out in the end. And like that's the calculus for like the dumbest Hollywood movie that you can come up with. But like, I don't know, it just it's helpful. I can enjoy these more when I realize just how dumb it is.
It's actually it feels like the opposite thesis from we just watched Palm Springs last night.
Oh yeah, that's great.
It seems to be like, that love is not a result of some kind of violent beginning, but it is something that matures out of almost the monotony of like just the being together, like the fully understanding of the other person.
Well, and it'll be
You know?
interesting to see like if Shakespeare can ever like do something like Palm Springs does, where the second half of the couple like transcends the other. Like he's just like, oh, we can never get out of this, so I'm just going to go through it day in day out and have a couple small adventures. And like she is the one that finds a way out, and she's the one that transcends both. Like his view of love is pretty small, and she wants something more than that. She wants something more out of her life, so she transcends the whole thing. But like it'll be interesting to see if like his imagination can like get that far, or if it would always be the story of just a heroic guy just like figuring out how to solve the problem. Because I don't know, I'm not sure if it can. Like that I love the way that movie is set up, and just like she like takes over all the action in the third act essentially. And I can't. Do you feel like, does he take any actions? Like does
No,
he
in
do
fact,
anything?
No, in fact, he's the major obstacle in the third act, because she wants to break the loop. She's actually spent most of her time learning quantum physics to break the loop, and he wants to stay. He wants to remain in that moment, And the greater theme then becomes like love is not something that can be static like that. It has to evolve and it has to mature in order for it to exist. And it's actually very beautiful. He is the problem. He's the obstacle in that. She's the one who solves it, and she's ultimately the one who gives permission for him to come back into her life. So, like in that respect, it does turn a lot of those things on its head. He does not figure shit out. In fact, he's past it. He's over discovery. He's over trying to improve his situation.
Yeah, which I think in a way, like you can give him credit for coming to peace with himself. There was a line he had in it which really stuck with me, where it's like, I won't get it right, but the sum of it was like, the violence that you undertake will have an effect on you, and it did happen to them. It's just the day reset. And I thought it was so telling. I thought it was great to show that he had some wisdom. It was great to show that like if J.K. Simmons is a murdering madman, then like he completely wrecked J.K. Simmons, and that like part of his mission has to be to like get J.K. Simmons into a non-psycho place. But for whatever reason, it stuck in my head. I was like, oh, well, then when she drives into the semi, like, well, that sucks for the semi driver. Even if the semi driver doesn't die, like he just pancaked two people, and like,
yeah,
I don't know, that like that's the part that might drive you insane in a time loop. It's just like, oh yeah, but in a way that actually happened. Like, I decided I needed to go Grand Theft Auto on this place just to like break the monotony, but then feel like, oh, but that since I remember that, I think those people will never remember the emotions that they had, but like that actually happened. And so I like the fact that like he's gotten to a place of acceptance, and like I won't do Grand Theft Auto things anymore because I'm just I think in a certain way these things do happen. And so I felt like his end of the road was just acceptance, but her end of the road was actually getting out. But to the earlier point, like she's the only one that can move the story forward.
I think
but again,
the word he
just
uses
bring it all
is
home, like I don't know if Shakespeare can ever do that with a woman character, which is hopefully a stupid thing to say out loud, and I'll be proved wrong in future episodes.
the character of, I want to say it's Rosalind.
Is that the bride?
It's Rosalind in oh Christ.
Is it the girl in the loop, or?
No. I'm talking about Shakespeare, because you wondered if Shakespeare ever gets to a female lead, and I want to say it's Rosalind. Oh God.
Is this As You Like It or 12th Night?
I think it's 12th Night. She's definitely the heroine in that, but I want to say that she's way more evolved than the women you see here. In these early, because like for me, Shakespeare right now is like Farrelly Brothers Shakespeare. You know, like he's not going to go Christopher Guest until, later on, like when he's a little more mature.
Yeah, all I can remember about 12th Night is that you're right. I can't remember any of the characters, but I just remember like, oh yeah. I just remember that there's good, and I feel like is there 2 cross-dressing women, or am I thinking?
I believe so. Yeah, there are 2.
So it breaks the Bechdel.
I mean, that never goes away, because cross-dressing apparently was huge.
Yeah, how have we not gotten so that's great. So we only got 2 acts left. We still have to see who was the first girl?
Julia.
Still have to see Julia with her hog in her pants.
Right.
Can't wait to see that. We have to see Valentine get mugged. I'm hoping. It seems like we should end up with like a whole switcheroo, and they end up with separate girls at the end. And maybe the boys get stabby with each other when they get jealous that they've all fallen in love with each other or something.
And then everybody freezes and the credits roll. And Mr. Furley comes out. Don Knotts is the Duke. And
I did a search for Don Knotts on Giphy the other day, and they are all A+.
I can, Dana Gould used to have a bit about Don Knotts, how it's impossible for, this was years ago, how it would be impossible for Don Knotts to be a crank caller, like a pervert crank caller, because his voice is so distinct. And I believe the line is something like, I've been looking at you through the bedroom window. Dana Gould.
I think he could do Lance too. Like,
oh, sure, 100%.
Like that's the archetype, just like.
That is to say, can she say?
He's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, Don.
Speed played by Vince Vaughn, ladies and gentlemen. All right, enough of that.
We have all the time the references on this show.
That's what the kids want to hear. They want to hear Don Knotts, Lenny Bruce references.
That's it. So this act had two scenes. The last one had 19 scenes?
Yeah. No, this was a short one. But there's still again, this I think is the major. Act 2 was the setup, and this is the Act 3 is definitely this is it, folks. We're getting into the, as you say, Proteus's heel turn.
There's just no need that I can tell to introduce violence into the plot. It would all work just fine if he was excommunicated, but that's the one thing that's happened to these love stories over the time, is that for modern sentiment no longer says and if you're gonna have a story about love, then 2 guys have to try and murder each other, or there has to be a risk of murder at some point. And it's I just enjoy the absurdity of that, where it's just it's clearly just the author placating the crowd and just well, if you like this, then this plus some stabbing will probably be fine. But I don't know, just it continues to, when you read it as Shakespeare, you're just oh, well, of course he has to leave under threat of death. But it's just what?
Well, he looked at Shrew and he's like, how can I up this game? How can I do it? Straight up death. Straight up murder. How about that?
Well, they'll all be happy at the end.
There's something about Shakespeare.
Stab it.
Did you notice Chuck sounded a bit different toward the end? It's because he got sucked into a time loop himself and he was kicking it old school with Don Knotts on the set of Three's Company. That's an AirPod microphone for you. Fat and Greasy is presented by the players Chuck and Gabe. Theme music, A Robust Crew, is by Darren Curtis. Next week, Acts 4 and 5 of 2 Gentlemen of Verona. And for me, 2 Jello shots in Daytona. See you then.